On behalf of Dallas College and the sustainability team, welcome. Thank you for joining Sustainable Dallas College for our Sustainable You webinar series. My name is Faye Davis, Assistant Director of Sustainability for Outreach and Engagement. Thank you to our speakers and to our sponsors. We hope you enjoy this presentation.
Well, hello everyone. I'm John DeFillipo, the director of the John Bunker Sands Wetland Center, not too far from downtown Dallas, about 25 miles southeast, near a small community called Combine, Texas. Some people call us the best hidden gem, but the word is out and the recognition is here. We've been around for 12 years. We opened our doors in 2010, and this year has been a fantastic year for our organization. We've been recognized not only nationally as a Leopold Conservation Award winner, but just recently internationally by Wetlands Link International from the United Kingdom. The reason that we've been recognized is a huge partnership that's behind us that's created not only this one-of-a-kind wetland, over 2,000 acres large, but also the John Bunker Sands Wetland Center, which resides right in the middle of this man-made wetland. You're probably wondering, wetlands in Texas? Isn't that on the coast? But they're actually right here along the Trinity River. Not many people know, but the Trinity River is the longest river that begins and ends in our state. And that river supplies water to close to 10 million people total. You can imagine the reservoirs. Over 17 reservoirs along the Trinity River Basin provides water to those people in far north Dallas, Plano, Richardson, Allen, and McKinney, which I'll talk about in a moment, but all the way down to Houston at our Gulf Coast. It is also one of the least studied biological rivers in the state because how it has been impacted by man to provide water and safety for the public. But that's why the Wetland Project is important. It was built to replace building a brand new reservoir. And for that, we have to go back just a little bit, around 1800, to when around Dallas there was a lot of cotton fields and farms. And people were slowly migrating and moving here, not really thinking that Dallas was going to grow to the extent that it did. One of those families, Caroline Rose Hunt and the Hunt family, moved to Texas in the early 1800s, about 1876, and they established ranches throughout the state. And our organization is actually in the middle of one of those ranches, just on the southern portion of the East Fork of the Trinity River. It was a 5,000-acre ranch total, and Caroline Rose Hunt's son, John Bunker Sands, went to college and learned about holistic ranch management. That meant treating the property not just for cattle, but also wildlife, wood ducks, migrating geese. So he was able to provide a cattle pasture and cow and calf raising, but also increasing wildlife habitat at the same time. That was the 1980s. Fast forward until the early 1990s, Bunker wanted to create a large wetland very similar to the one that you see here that would just clean the water from the Trinity River, and it would go right back in the river and go downstream. Well, even for a large family with a lot of land, it would cost over $500,000 to bring water into this once wetland and restore it as a wetland from the 1990s. So the plan sat on a shelf, and time moved forward, and the North Texas Municipal Water District, which actually supplies water to all of the cities that you see on this map here: Richardson, Plano, Allen, McKinney, and Frisco. At that time, this water district really supplied water from the late 1970s until the mid-1980s to small farming communities. But we all know what happened next. Many of you out there that go to college or are looking at this video have moved to Texas, or you have people that you know that have moved to our state in the past 20 years. Well, most of that population is in this north area, the fastest growing cities in the entire United States, McKinney, Plano, and Frisco. Well, we need a new reservoir if we have new people, and the North Texas Municipal Water District just had one, Lake Lavon. Lavon Lake, in the northern edge of that watershed, was built in the 1940s for agriculture, never thinking that that water would be supplied to millions of people. Well, since that time, it has grown quite a bit, and additional water supplies have come into that reservoir from Lake Texoma up north, Lake Tawakoni out east, and Lake Jim Chapman. But there was a concept on the horizon from our neighbor city in Fort Worth. They were experimenting with man-made wetlands to recycle treated wastewater. That means water that you used to brush your teeth or wash your hair this morning or last night, washed down the drain, and went to a wastewater treatment facility. They figured out that if they could capture that water again and push it through a wetland, the wetland would filter out what's left behind, which is nitrate, phosphate, and ammonia. Well, the North Texas Municipal Water District worked with Tarrant Regional Water District to learn about this process. And also one other partner. I mentioned earlier, partnerships are very important for this. A group called Plummer Associates. We'll learn about them a little bit more with Virginia. So these three partners came together, Caroline Rose Hunt Family, North Texas Municipal Water District, and Plummer Associates to design one of the largest man-made wetlands in the entire United States to recycle not just thousands, but millions of gallons of water every day. You're probably wondering, well, how does that work? How does that happen? How do you build a partnership like that? We get that question a lot, and that's why our organization has stood out as an example for the rest of the country and also for the rest of our state. And here's how it works. If we go to this map right here, I'm going to point out where the Wetland Center is, which is just south here in the middle of the East Fork Wetland Project, which is about 2,000 acres large. If we go to the top of the watershed at Levon Lake, that is right here in the middle. And there's all of these cities around: McKinney, Allen, Plano, Garland, Mesquite. And if you look closely on the map, there's orange triangles that are the wastewater treatment facilities. There's 5 total. The North Texas Municipal Water District applied for a permit from the state of Texas to reclaim 100% of their treated wastewater because they actually clean the water right here in the city of Wiley at a water treatment facility and deliver that to over 2 million people. Well, once that water goes back to a wastewater treatment facility, it goes back in the river, and it flows downstream to us. Flows through Lake Ray Hubbard, which is owned by the city of Dallas. So we just imagine that water molecule, we just pass that water molecule through that dam, comes down south about 8 miles, and then it pops out right here on the northern part of the East Fork of the Trinity River. Right here at the very top of our project, there are 3 sediment basins. That water is pumped into the wetland. 3 300 horsepower engines can pump anywhere between 20 million and 90 million gallons of water a day. I said that right, 90 million gallons, equivalent to almost 138 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Pretty phenomenal. When that water passes through the wetland, it goes to the sediment basins first, which allows the sediment, the silt, and the sand. A lot of people say that the Trinity River looks like chocolate milk. I think it looks like strawberry milk, but I'm not going to differ. That sediment filters out to the bottom, and then from this point through the entire wetland, that water flows by gravity at a 0.1% grade for you engineers out there as it flows through over 20 different species of plants, all native, not just to the East Fork of the Trinity River, but the state of Texas, like bulrush, cattail, and pickerelweed. As that water flows through, the plants pull out what's left behind from the wastewater treatment facilities, which is nitrate, phosphate, and ammonia. If you have a green thumb and you're a planter, you know that that is their food. It pulls that water up into the roots, it volatilizes it and releases it back into the atmosphere, or it stores it in the tissues and the stems or the soil, which we'll get to in a moment, and that's very important for this remediation. We call this process phytoremediation. Everybody at home and in your class, try that word, phytoremediation, literally meaning plants restoring the balance of the water. It takes 7 to 10 days for the water to flow through the wetland. There's over 26 different wetland cells. This was an original wetland back when this land was a farmland. Our wetland center is right in the middle, so the part that the public can access, this lower 800 acres, is where the polishing occurs at the very final stages, what we call cell 7, cell 8, cell 9, and cell 10. As the water flows through those final cells, it gets to an area called the storage pond, which is about 1 mile from our visitor center. In that storage pond, that water waits and then is pumped by 5 3,000 horsepower engines, huge engines the size of a ship engine, underground through a 7-foot diameter pipe, 7 feet round. That water flows underground for 43 miles. If you look at this yellow line here, it flows all the way back to Lavon Lake, which is the reservoir of origin. That same water molecule I mentioned earlier ends back in the reservoir, and it takes roughly 6 months for that water molecule to be pulled out again at the water treatment facility. It's polished, disinfected, and delivered back to those groups. So, over 90 million gallons a day, billions and billions of gallons of water have been recycled in the past 10 years. And here's the best part. We didn't have to build a new reservoir. Reservoirs are static. They can dry, just as we've been experiencing drought in the state of Texas and throughout the southwestern United States. A wetland can be dynamic. It can grow with the environment. It can actually grow with the population. And in this case, the more water users, the more water we have being able to recycle through our wetland. It prevented that water district from having to build a wetland or a reservoir for 10 years. So it actually did an amazing job at that. So if you come out to visit us, when you come to the Wetland Center, we're actually located about 25 miles southeast of Dallas off of Highway 175 in a small community called Combine. What to expect when you visit us? We have a 7/10 of a mile boardwalk that goes out over the shallow water zones and deep water zones. You can scan the horizon looking for one-of-a-kind American bald eagles that are breeding on the property. We actually have a camera on their nest, but we also have multitude of wildlife, bobcats, coyotes, river otters, and also nutria. We have wildlife that migrate here all the way from Canada in the wintertime with the Canadian geese. So it's the one place that I'll guarantee that you'll see at least one bird or some mammals when you're visiting. When you come to the Wetland Center, you can actually come out any day, Tuesday through Friday, 9 to 4, and we're open up Saturdays at 7 a.m. for our early morning birders. We have amazing activities that we provide, not only to adults, but 4th grade through high school. Even the college students that are out there listening to us, it is a premier example of environmental education, learning about sustainability, not just for water, but wildlife as well. One part about the wetland that is fantastic, it has also been an incubator for research. Since we opened our doors in 2010, we've done research with Baylor University, University of Texas at Tyler, but most recently, we have done research with Virginia Kilgore with Water is Alive. We're very excited about this process because the biologists and the scientists are always looking for ways to increase the way that the wetland can actually filter that water even better. And also, it's a shining example to focus on how these wetlands can be used, not just in the state of Texas, but different parts of the country. The city of Dallas, right now, as being inspired by our wetland, is building a new wetland over the next 3 years called the Dallas Water Commons to show a wetland close-up right in the downtown city of Dallas. Our organization is also a nonprofit 501c3. We have all kinds of amazing events for the public to enjoy. Please come out and visit us and tell them that John sent you. Thank you very much for your time.
Hi there, my name is Virginia Kilgore. I am the founder of Water is Alive. I have a surprise for you today. This is something that everybody can do to involve ourselves in sustainability and also kind of terraforming and whatever terra we happen to be forming. The Earth right now is where we're at, and this is the one planet we really need to take care of since this is perfect just the way it is. And we got to keep it that way. So, this is Bokashi Composting. And this is onion juice that comes from a plant, an onion processing plant in Dallas, Texas. This is the tea, the compost tea that I'm going to teach you how to make with your own kitchen wastes. And this is made of onion waste coming off of this plant. These onions have been batch tested for pathogenic bacteria. Part of them are organic. Otherwise, they are taken to a composting facility. But mostly what happens with onion waste, just like all other wastes that are coming from our stream of organics, go to the landfill. And the problem with that is that it sequesters all these this is full of life. This has never been denatured. So it's never been exposed to heat or high levels or low levels of pH that could destroy these enzymes and these amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks of life. And this is the reason that we need to do something with them other than throw them away in the landfill where they can no longer be recycled back into life again, or to burn them, which happens in a lot of countries. We incinerate our waste. Even composting, the way that it's done in the United States and most countries, exposes the compostable organics to high levels of heat. And temperatures over about 140, 150 completely melt and completely melt, which is called denaturation, the enzymes and the amino acids, which we desperately need to keep on the surface of our planet so that it can be recycled up the food chain again and again and again. This process takes about 2 weeks from the processing of the onion, so it could be essentially 2 weeks from coming out of the ground to going back into the ground, which generally composting takes about a year. Cheers. So, right now I'm going to teach you how to do Bokashi composting at home. With these onions, we fill approximately 1,000 pounds in 2.5 minutes in a similar system to what I'm going to teach you here how to do at home with buckets. 5-gallon buckets, when they're full, they get pretty heavy, so if you can get smaller buckets, especially if you're not particularly strong or you're alone or with a small family and you don't eat that many, you don't cook at home that much, so you don't have a whole lot of wastes, smaller buckets will be more agreeable. So what I'm doing is I'm putting this bag out here because I'm going to show you how to make holes, and this is a step drill. So this is my nice brand new drill with a step drill on top of it. And after years of making holes in buckets to teach people how to do this in the United States and in the Netherlands, I have come to realize that there are little or no drill bits that make large plastics when you're drilling. So the trick is to take a bucket. Actually, this is a 2-bucket system. So we're gonna start with the inside bucket. Oh, there we go! So I'm just gonna make these holes get pretty big, pretty fast, so you gotta control your drill to not make gargantuan holes. So the issue with plastics like this, when doing some activity like this, is that they make a lot of microplastics. And this is the reason I'm using a step drill instead of a regular drill. A regular drill makes holes that give off thousands of little teeny tiny pieces of plastic, and when you're outside doing this, of course, this just looks like bird food and they eat it, and not good for us, definitely not good for them. So the system is, let's say, to drill more holes than this, maybe twice as many, 15, 20 holes. They don't have to be as big as that. They can be as small as the smallest hole right there. The system is 2 buckets. They have to be perfectly fitting so that you don't get a whole lot of oxygen going down here, because this is an anaerobic process. So when these fairly well fitted, you don't want the top bucket to be bigger than the bottom bucket, otherwise you'll never get these loose and they'll be married forever. And then you need a lid that fits very well. And you know that the lid is going to fit well if you put anything in it and you try to dump it out, that it's not going to lose the juice or any content. So this is an anaerobic process, which means that it's without air. So this particular process is fermentation. So we're taking organic wastes like mangoes. So we're taking mango slices, and I have a bin down here where I'm putting everything in. And this is inoculated, this onion juice, with microorganisms. They're called effective microorganisms. They were originally developed in Japan in the 1980s, and they're just really good for fermentation and for agriculture. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put a bunch of compostables here for the benefit of this class. I did do dumpster diving. Has anybody ever heard of dumpster diving before? That's when you actually get in a dumpster to get very handy things like this. So you can conduct composting classes. Or if you don't have anything to eat, you can jump in there and get stuff to eat because they throw perfectly good stuff away. So I'm going to start with my own waste from my own kitchen. This is what I had for dinner last night, asparagus. That's a lot of waste for asparagus, but that's just the way that you do asparagus. You kind of clip it off where it breaks the easiest. So that's a lot of asparagus in there, as you can see. This process is chips. I opened this about a month and a half ago and didn't eat my chips. These are just regular containers of whatever plastic containers I get. Sometimes I don't even wash them out. I just empty them and then put my compostables in here, then put them in the fridge. And when I have enough, I put them in my bucket. So this is a pre-composting process. I'm actually feeding the microorganisms in my effective microorganisms, or in this case, in my onion juice. I'm feeding my microorganisms all of this organic waste from my kitchen, and they're going to eat those. And in 2 weeks from now, they'll be completely fermented. This is another thing that I just fished out of my what's it called? Refrigerator today, because I try to keep these in the refrigerator because it's needed. The only thing that I probably wouldn't put in here right now are the flowers, because flowers are produced with a lot of chemicals. And even though these will break down those chemicals, I'm going to put all this stuff in my garden. So I'm not really interested in putting all the chemicals in these beautiful flowers in my garden right now, so I'm not going to do it. The thing about wastes is that whenever you have like a bag like this is a bag of lemons. Of course, these came from at least California, if not much further than that. When there's one bad lemon in a case or in a bag or anything, or one bad anything in a bag of already pre-bagged vegetables that you buy, they throw the whole thing away. The whole bag. So I found this in the trash. One lemon was bad. They threw the whole bag away. That's a lot of energy to be throwing away. So I am not going to throw those away right now. I might do that later. But for these purposes, I am not going to, because it's a waste. I could squeeze them and make lemonade, even though I found them in the trash. They've got a skin on them. So this is organic, free-range chicken. So when I compost meats, I generally do that between fruit layers. Like, I would not generally compost meats just together unless it was never going to be, well, in certain circumstances, I have experimented composting meats, and it was successful, but that's another story. So right now I am kind of layering these meats, because the difference between meats, composting meats, and composting regular vegetables or fruits is that things like chicken harbor bacteria like salmonella, and we want to avoid salmonella when possible. Even though we're introducing this to the soil, and the soil will help break it down where these microbes don't break it down, we still want to take care and not and be mindful of the salmonella and the introduction of that back into our gardens. So I have some more meat, but this is my coffee grounds from home. I'm just gonna put that in here. So about every time that you open this, at least, you need to put some either Bokashi starter on here, which is a dried bran that you can buy that already has these microbes in it, or you can spray this on there, which is a method that I invented because it's easier and you don't have to touch it, and it stays sealed in a bottle when you're not using it. But I think I'm probably the only one, if you look for Bokashi Composting anywhere, that does it in a spray bottle. So that was some chicken salad that I put in here. So I'm going to put some more fruits. There's a lot of enzymes in fruits, and and I just want to kind of layer that chicken between the enzymes, because the enzymes will help break down the pathogenic bacteria and, of course, the bones and the meat of the chicken. So the nice thing about Bokashi is that you can put cooked foods in here, you can put lemons in there, you can put breads, you can put basically all of the foods and the organics that that are coming out of your kitchen or maybe your restaurant in this Bokashi. So this is some more free-range organic chicken I found in the dumpster. We're gonna layer this in there. I'm a vegetarian, so don't have a lot of cooked meats, but I definitely advocate for the cooked meats and any kind of agricultural, let's say dairy, well, cows, sheep, pigs, all of their bodily stuffs, including humans, are of course also made out of amino acids and enzymes. So I'm kind of advocating for composting of life instead of just like sequestration, which means that we're putting it away somewhere forever or destroying it so that it cannot be bioavailable again for the chain of life. So here we are. I just put some more chicken in there. So I am layering this with some more mango slices. This is some Caesar salad. Good stuff. I don't know about y'all, but sometimes I definitely buy salads and then don't consume all of them. So the plastics and stuff definitely don't need to go into the Bokashi. It's possible to fish them out later when you're burying this in your garden, and there's several ways that you can bury this. It's not just dumping it on the ground. We don't dump it on the ground kind of like we do when we're in the country on the compost pile, because that attracts other wild molds to your compost, and it allows this it allows it to dry out, and it attracts insects and dogs and things that you don't want to be digging through your compost, because as we are feeding this compost to these microorganisms right here, when these microorganisms kind of finish eating this, it will be fermented, so we're actually making like a wine out of this. So it'll be fermented and ready to go back into the soil to feed the indigenous microbes that are in the soil. And that's what has been here in any soil for millions of years. So of course, those microorganisms are the best suited to any particular part of the world as the microorganisms that have been developing there for the last billions of years. So this is cilantro. Of course, this happens to the best of us. We buy expensive stuff. We leave it sitting there for a couple of extra days, and we might as well just compost it because it's not good anymore. So this is cheese and kind of like a party platter with salami and Italian meats and cheese tray. So we are feeding the microorganisms, again, this meat, this salad, this cilantro, these avocados and bananas, and then to top it off, we're gonna put a little bit more chicken salad in here. And in the course of the next couple of days, I will get some more stuff and put it on here so this can be completely filled to the top. And then I'm going to take a piece of plastic, which could be like our cheese tray here, except that ideally it would be round and fit right over this. And I'm gonna kind of press the air out of this. First, I'm gonna put a little bit more microbes on here to eat this chicken salad and some of the rest of this good stuff. And this is Bokashi Composting. So as this is fermenting, all of the fluids in this will be dripping down through the holes that we drilled in here with our step drill bit, and it'll accumulate a tea at the bottom, which is just like this onion, the onion extract right here. So this will be full of these microbes because, of course, we are inoculating all of this stuff that we put in here with this. So right now we probably introduced a couple of billion microbes to this with how many milliliters. There's over probably 5 million CFUs in this particular batch, which is colony forming units, which means microbes like this guy right there. That's one microbe that's in this batch because this is the same thing as that. So this is the screen right next to us is showing just a small little sliver of some of the 31 microbes that are actually living in this. So right now, the trick is to seal this and then keep it sealed. So sometimes when you're doing this at home, you think, oh, just where is that stuff? I don't want to find it, or I don't want to seal the bucket, or I don't want to find 2 buckets that fit. The trick is to keep this anaerobic as much as possible. So that's why I put everything in these small like yogurt containers or other containers as to not open this a lot. So this can remain closed and this fermentation process can happen. So these microbes can fully eat the insides of these fruits and vegetables and meats in an anaerobic situation. Because when you open this and you're talking as I am now, and all the microbes in here, they settle on this and they start growing in there. And these are very strong. So essentially these can take a lot of strange foreign microbes that aren't in this or aren't generally on the food. But we just kind of, I like to keep this bucket closed as much as possible. So when this is full, and let's just say this is for practical purposes, this is full. I'm going to write today's date on here, and then over 2 weeks, and even in the summer, a week, this is ready to, sometimes I dig trenches in my garden and put this in there. If you have dogs, that gets difficult, so I use 55-gallon barrels. Like I said, you have to introduce this back into the soil. So if you're introducing it into a 55-gallon barrel, you can take soil from your garden, put it at the bottom of the 55-gallon barrel with holes drilled in that too, with a step drill so as to not create like microplastics. We're going for bigger plastics that don't look like food to animals. And you want to layer this between soil. And this is how we turn our trash. This is how I turn all of my trash. I have about 1 trash bag every other week that I take to the corner, because this is probably about 60% of what people throw away, if not more. So my trash, I can leave it sitting there in my kitchen for a month. It's not going to attract any flies. It's not going to stink. I don't have to take it out every week because I'm doing this. Even if it takes you 2 weeks to fill this bucket, as long as you try to keep it closed most of the time, except when you're dumping your stuff in there, your compost is going to be fine. It'll develop a thin layer of kind of a fungus on the top of it, but of course that's what yeasts are. Yeasts are kind of fungus, so it'll drain down into here. You can dilute this with, let's say, if there's this much liquid, we want to put about maybe 10% liquid to 1 part liquid to 10 parts water, or 50 parts water. You just dilute it like you want it. Maybe don't put it directly pure on your plants. But that is, in essence, Bokashi Composting. Please contact me if you want some coaching or some inspiration or other ideas. Look at my YouTube channel. You can find links to that at www.waterisalive. This is fairly simple, should be fairly cheap. You could do this for including buying the effective microorganisms for $35 or less. So please consider this. This is the building blocks of life on Earth, and we just need to figure out how to take better care of them. Thank you. Hello, I'm Virginia Kilgore of Water is Alive, and I'm here today with John DeFillipo, and he is with the East Fork Wetland Project. I always call it the John Bunker Sands Wetlands, but that's what I've been calling it for years. I'm so excited about constructed wetlands because constructed wetlands is a very natural way to reuse water, and as our population continues to increase and agricultural chemicals continue to enter our water streams, as well as everything that we put in the water stream ourselves, which just is not the water that we're putting down the drain, but it's also everything that we're putting in our yard and all of the oils that are dripping off of our cars and other chemicals that find their way outside into the soil when it rains, all that. Not all of it, but a lot of it runs off into our waterways and ends up in our drinking water or our drinking water area, which is called a watershed. So our watershed here in Texas, which goes all the way from North Texas all the way down to Houston, we are in the Trinity River watershed. And John and the East Fork Wetland Project, like he explained and I explained, they can filter up to 90, actually Plummer and Associates told me up to 120 million gallons a day of our water that is sent to our houses. We use it, it goes back into the water, into the sewage system, and then gets filtered out in a process called wastewater treatment. That water gets flushed out into the Trinity River. That Trinity River water carries it down to the coast in theory, but a lot of that is also fished out and put into the East Fork Wetland Project to again be sent right back up, and it ends up again after 6 months or a year in our municipal water supply. So how do we meet again?
Right. Well, great to be here with Virginia. And our organization, the John Bunker Sands Wetland Center, is in the middle of this project, which is a wonderful laboratory for teaching about students. And we got connected a couple of years ago through a connection at the North Texas Municipal Water District. I think one of their educators introduced you to us in 2021. In the middle of COVID, we were still going strong and bringing out high school students at one of our summer camps called Aquatic Science Investigations. And this summer camp really focuses on conservation and careers for students that are about to graduate high school and go into college. And our focus when we brought Virginia on was to help broaden their mind about real life applications about sustainability that is done in this part of the state of Texas. So we were introduced there, and then we talked, and you came out and you did a program actually for our summer camp, that ASI. And then this year at EarthX in April, one of our other educators said, "Hey, how's it going?" And we started talking again. And then you came to us with a proposal, her first full proposal of actually using her onion juice extract to either reduce nitrate and phosphate or reduce E. coli in the wetland. And when we had this first conversation, it was great because we have a system that is self-contained. You were talking about putting it in one of the creeks, and that was hard because it was hard to judge volume. But in the wetland, we had very specific cells that we could put it in. We knew how much was going in and how much was going out. I still remember that day, Virginia, when you came out. We walked around the property to pick that cell. If you want to kind of relive that day a little bit, how did you feel when you were there on site? Or is your expression telling me right now?
Oh, the wetlands to me is like Mecca, just because it is so functional and so effective at what it does. So we were talking about where should we do it and how much volume of water would be going through, because my ratio is based upon 1 gallon of the biostimulant per 10,000 gallons
That's it right there,
of water, right? So I was, looking for a space that we could definitely measure how much water was passing through that cell. And of course, the kind of the crown jewel of the crown jewel is right in front of the wetland center, cell 7A.
It is.
Because that's where all of the boardwalk is, and people visit that that and they see that, and you can actually walk out without wearing a wader into the middle of the wetlands and observe the aquatic life and see all the wildlife around you and actually look up close to at all the plants and experience that because they're kind of growing through the wetlands.
Right,
So you're actually touching that. So
and we wanted that space because we knew the public could interact with this, not that they would interact with the actual onion juice, but see the process. So seeing your large containers of the onion juice dripping into the wetland. And during summer camp, we actually had some of the summer students, campers actually help, or in some of the examples that you did on site. So it was a real life application that we could provide for our organization about what biologists and scientists are doing to help water remediate and actually help it be in a better quality. So we did that this summer, and I can't believe it's already passed. And you got some preliminary results, I think?
I do. I do. In fact, we just got the Eurofin Zinco is a laboratory that can do environmental analyses, and that they're also EPA and TCEQ, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, which is kind of like the Texas EPA. So they actually did the testing of the water that I sampled every week during the test. So I sampled. We were applying the onion juice at the beginning of cell 7A. Okay. And so here's the wetland center. This is cell 7A. The way that these work is this is train 7A. So the water goes from cell 7A into cell 7B into cell 7C, and then it comes back in this area right here. And then this is where the pump house is that takes it back up to Lake Lavon. So this is train A. Train 7, this is train 8, this is train 9, and this is train 10. So we were applying the onion juice to train 7, and we were using train 8 as the control. So all of the testing that I do here at 7A, we were also doing at 8A to use as a control, since the water coming down through here and entering this part of the wetlands, this is all kind of homogeneous water. It's basically the same water. So as I was testing this, I was testing these as well, as kind of like a competition. Who's doing better, right? Who's doing better? So this is where we applied over a 45-day period, beginning on June the 15th, ending on July the 27th. I was applying together with my onion buddies 21,000 gallons. So we bottled it in 300-gallon IBC totes, and we'd bring it out on a trailer. And we just hooked it up to hoses. We put a gallon jug out like this. We measured how much time it took to fill up a gallon, and then we divided that by how many minutes in a day, and then that's how we applied it to the water based upon how much water was flowing into this cell. So over the course of the summer, it increased, and by the end of this 45-day period, we were putting 4 300-gallon totes of onion juice into this wetland cell and testing it the whole time. I waited until basically the end to do the sediment testing, because that's I was hoping to see results in the water. As I was doing this testing, I realized from the scientist that wrote this end report that unless you achieve a 50% difference in the nutrients in the water, and John and I talked about that, that's generally the phosphates, the nitrates, and the ammonias, then it's not really a significant difference. So after it was about, maybe I started testing the sediment just like the plumber associates test that, and I got a wader, and I'd go out in the water, and I had like a plunger, and I'd go down in the sediment, which is sometimes this far under the wetland plants that are accumulating. So I'd actually stick my hand through the plants and then take a plug of this, and then I'd put, I think I was doing mostly 15 or 20 different small plugs of the first inch, and then I put them in a plastic bag and I'd squish them up, and then I cut the end off of it, kind of like decorating a cake. I'd put them in a bottle and then seal that up, label that, and then rush that to the lab for their testing. And so we saw in this kind of area, right in the middle of the wetland cells, that the preliminary testing showed that, especially with the TKN, and TKN stands for total geldol nitrogens, which includes nitrogens and ammonias, that it showed that in this cell, in cell 7A, where we had applied the 21,000 gallons of onion juice, that those nitrogens on the 20th of August were at 729 milligrams per kilogram here, and in the cell where we hadn't applied that, it was still 1,610 milligrams per kilogram of this total geldol nitrogen, which includes nitrogen and ammonia. So that is a significant difference, which, considering this is, that's what our drinking water is. That's what we're aiming for, is to reduce the nitrogens, the phosphates, and the ammonias from the water and the sediment so that the plants can do more, and they can remove more of these out of the water, as well as other things that are in the water. So and it is essentially what it did is we fertilized the plants with, this is liquid compost, right? And the plants and the bacteria and the plant root zones were super activated by this liquid compost. And that was how we arrived at this almost miraculous reduction. So we're going to keep on testing and see how that goes. We have just been asked by Dallas colleges to start a service learning program, and we'd like to do this at the pilot project at North Lake College. North Lake is along a creek called Cottonwood Creek that's been in a total maximum daily load implementation zone for a while. That's an area where there's a lot more E. coli than normal, so that indicates that there's a lot more nutrients in the water. And we'd like to restore the riparian zone, which is right next to the water, to make that a little bit more wetlands, and then start Bokashi gardens based upon the Bokashi system that I was teaching you. This is also the Bokashi system. And see if we can reduce some of the runoff that's coming maybe off of the campus into the water, and then try to expand that along that area, and see if our service learning program, together with students, that will actually, if you'd like to get involved in this, you need to go to your faculty person and request to be introduced to the service learning program. You can actually earn an hour credit per semester by getting involved. And we'll also be doing programs with the service learning program at John Bunker Sands or the East Fork Wetland Project, and getting involved yourselves to try to figure out how we can improve the quality of our water, of our soil, and our environment, which is our own health. That's how it's kind of reflected in nature. Is we're as healthy as the planet that we're taking care of. So
great to be here. We have also opportunities at the Wetland Center for student and adult volunteers for trail work, inside work, outside work. So great. You can do some service learning potentially through one of these projects or at our organization. Well, I look forward to the next steps, Virginia. So but she's doing laboratory testing right now, or will be, and then making a full proposal back to the Wetland Center for a bigger sampling in the project. So it's been great working with you.
Yes, thank you so much,
Thank you.
John. Thank you.